How often have you walked into a bookstore and chosen, or perhaps not chosen, a book based solely on its cover? The artwork, maybe the catchphrase, what piqued your interest? Until you dive into the narrative, you don't really know what's in store for you. The same is often true for people. You never quite know what's behind any one individual's outward persona. What experiences have they had that has shaped them, guided them, or limited them? We are often so ready to judge based on our limited lens, whether it's envy, thinking their life is far better than ours, or our belief that our life is superior to theirs, again, based solely on their appearance or our perception of their actions with very little context, generally very little backstory. We are a society quite judgmental, and by being judgmental, we can miss amazing opportunities to see what truly is behind the curtain and what resilience not only looks like, but offers us in terms of our collective learning and the beauty and gifts that are awakened when given the keys. That is often the real backstory. Welcome to Small and Gutsy, our podcast featuring nonprofits and social enterprises under $10 million. My name is Dr. Laura Shark-Witkoff, and I'm excited and proud to be your host. We hope you'll love the stories as much as we do, and perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, invest in, or donate. Small and Gutsy is not just a podcast, but a 501c3 nonprofit. Our vision is to spotlight every smaller nonprofit and social enterprise to raise their visibility. So please help me with our vision and send me any organization you'd like featured to laura@smallandgutsy.org. The phrase, "don't judge a book by its cover," means appearances can be deceiving, and it suggests that one should not make assumptions merely from what is seen on the surface. This particular phrase is over 150 years old. In part, the proverb likely stems from the tendency of people to make judgments before truly getting to know something or someone. We know that if a person is looking for a book to read, as I opened this podcast with, the book's cover is typically the first thing to catch their attention. Welcome to the marketing world. But do we know how to market ourselves with dignity, pride, and power instead of regret, shame, or even pity? Would you ever buy a product that sold pity versus transformational power? Aren't we drawn through the beauty of transformation? Isn't that the moth to the butterfly story? What makes the butterfly beautiful is actually the transformation of the creature and the breaking out of its protective, or dare I say, defensive cocoon. It's nature, of course, but isn't it also the determination of the moth to exercise its capacity to break free and become what it's meant to become? All of the organizations in the Small and Gutsy family are incredibly special and significant. The one I'm going to share with you today has a deep conviction in the belief in others despite circumstances, and not just belief, but actively creating a roadmap to fulfill the potential that exists in all of us. We just don't always see that potential. We present covers to hide behind that dim light that reveals our true gifts. Everyone has ambition, meaning a strong desire to do or to achieve something, typically requiring determination, hard work. But not everyone knows how to exercise it. Very often, individuals haven't been given the opportunity or the access or even the belief that they are able to dream. But dream with a goal in mind that has a path and a method by which a dream can be realized is truly the dream I'm talking about. Ambition, yes, that's the name of our featured nonprofit, and a perfect name at that, is an entrepreneurial program for disadvantaged youth. Its mission is to reframe their potential and to provide students with the support, access, and resources necessary to reach their goals. You Don't Know About Me, their signature program, unites brave and powerful voices to inspire deep and meaningful conversations with ambition's trademark, power, not pity approach. As their website beautifully shares, it takes courage to stand up and declare our challenges with power, not pity. Concerned that disadvantaged students lack consistent mentorship and exposure to real-world business experience, Nancy Gale, JAMAH luxury handbag brand designer and owner, founded Ambition in 2010 in an effort to integrate cause and commerce. I just love that connection, whereby the success of JAMAH provides the bandwidth to support Ambition. Just amazing. Ambition fosters innovation, solution-driven thinking, confidence, and builds a professional work ethic, collaborative, hands-on participation, and powerful, consistent connections with business leaders and special guests. They are at the heart of this mentor-driven program. And I love, love, love their mantra is one student at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 year at a time, one opportunity at a time, one mentor at a time, one leader at a time. Ambition president and mentor Nancy Gale, business owner, designer, mentor, and passionate activist, is an inspiring individual with a fascinating story of her own of overcoming hardship and turning it into something beautiful. Having always envisioned a world where cause and commerce are in alignment, Nancy pioneered an innovative business model where a brand and its cause are so profoundly integrated that one cannot function without the other. The success of JAMAH provides the bandwidth to support ambition. Growing up in Detroit, Nancy witnessed firsthand the benefits of manufacturing in the United States and the value of American craftsmanship. Having grown up with access and exposure to real-world business experience, Nancy wanted to share her family dinner table experience with kids who did not have the opportunities that she had. This ignited her vision for ambition. Nancy is dedicated to inspiring and motivating the entrepreneurs of today and tomorrow. I am so very excited to welcome Nancy Gale to the Small and Gutsy family. So let's get started. Nancy, you have so much wisdom to share. I'm just going to open it up. Where do you want to begin? You're just incredible, and I feel privileged to have met you.
Oh, thank you so much. I loved listening to that. I'm so used to being in so many different pockets that to hear everything together is actually a treat even for me. So thank you.
Thank you. So many of my guests say that because it's the first time they've heard pieces reflected back to them in that way. And I never know if I capture it correctly. So thank you. That makes me feel good. And you honor me. So tell us any part of your story you want to. And those of us, when we do a video clip, will see these stunning handbags behind you. But I love the integration of the two. And you're an example of that to give to these students. So wherever you want to start your story is where we're going to begin.
I guess we can start there. There's so many different components and sort of facets of how all of this has come together. I guess we'll sort of jump around. But I started JAMAH in January of 2000. So we just had our 25th anniversary.
Congratulations. It's great.
Really, we pride ourselves on being the ultra luxury made in the USA handbag brand. And there are many great USA designers, but what we've done is really cross the line from designing bags to actually being a brand that really stands for something. And for me, one of the things it stands for is this connection of cause and commerce. And when I started in 2000, it was probably about 5 years later when the whole cause marketing term was everywhere.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, what I kept coming upon was something that felt like find a cause, any cause, act like you care because that will help you sell merchandise.
That's a really interesting frame.
And again, to be fair, that may not have been everybody's mission, but it became a big mission. Also, what I didn't want to see, especially selling bags at my price point, is this idea that anything financial, any money started to equal greed and evil. That just didn't sit with me. So as you said earlier, the reason I decided I wanted to launch Ambition was because I feel like I grew up at the ideal dinner table. And how can I share that with kids that don't have the access and exposure that I did? And for me, growing up with access and exposure, it wasn't about money. That's not the game changer. Access is the game changer. Exposure is the game changer. And so how do I blend these two together where we have the ultimate and utmost respect for all these components? And so I realized, gosh, I'm in such an interesting situation because based on what I do for a living, I can work with these students and find a place where they have respect for people that are in different positions than they are. And then ultimately, they'll start to just experience people that are working hard and becoming successful, and that money doesn't equal greed. In fact, it's an amazing tool. And we have a lot of students who say, one day I want to buy my mom a house.
It's great.
They can't do that if they don't work hard and earn the money that will allow that to be a possibility. So I thought, what does that look like for me? Instead of making it like when you buy a bag, we'll donate to Ambition, I thought if we embrace ambition as a brand, so everybody who works for JAMAH in one way or another volunteers for ambition. Some of our folks come to class, some do it by trade, but however that comes about, we're connected that way. So that's a really beautiful piece too, because it also tells me everybody I'm working with is aligned.
Yeah, and I have to just say one thing, which is so stellar because it's really deeply embedded in the philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that interconnectedness is essential, and one does hold the other's hand on both sides. And that's an incredible value that you hold that I just want to point out. I think it's really amazing. And it's a fantastic model for the students with whom you engage because they don't see it as making money is really important. And it's not the sole thing. There's another component to that. And so that philosophy of being able to have an integrated giving back is not giving back, quote, for charity. It's giving back with a purpose of moving forward. There's a difference in that. I love it. I love it.
And it's funny, what we've discovered, we just like to call it giving.
Yeah, I love it.
Because there's this idea, if it's giving back, right, that there always has to be this equal exchange, as opposed to something that's just, to your point earlier, embedded in our philosophies. And so for us, it's like giving's just part of it.
Yeah.
However that looks, that you just make part of your core philosophy is you give.
I just love that. I think it's great. So I want to hear, how did you come up with the name Ambition? And it's evolved over the years because you've been in that business for quite a long time.
Yes.
Which is amazing. So share that story and then we'll keep going with other stories because you have plenty.
Yes. So when I started, again, I just knew that I wanted to share my dinner table. I didn't know exactly what that looked like. I thought, well, I have a handbag brand, maybe we'll have a design facet in here. And then as I got into the classroom and I was working with the students, and we work with primarily juniors and seniors in high school, what I noticed was I need to find something that will apply to every student, male, female, whatever that looks like. Because my handbag brand, right, is very specific to something that I'm impassioned about. But what I realized was every student, hands down, will benefit from learning marketing.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Whether they go into marketing, whether they start their own business, whether they're applying for colleges or jobs or trade schools, whatever that is, we need these kids to learn how to sell themselves. So I thought, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be really marketing centric. But how do we really pull this together and market this? And the thing I learned more than anything else with these students is if you do not know them, you cannot teach them.
Oh, I love that. Because you can't connect with them and they can't connect with you.
Yes. And if you don't understand the homes that they are walking into at the end of the school day,
Yeah.
you're going to continually miss the mark. And then we discovered that 100%. So I thought, what we need to do is really get to know the kids. And that doesn't mean in a week or in 2 weeks. So we actually started a program, and it's a leadership program. So we pull all these interesting components together. And that's where we started with You Don't Know About Me. And what an official You Don't Know About Me is, you spend the entire first semester every single week with the mentors, and the mentors do it as well as the students. And you dig into what you would ultimately call one of your greatest challenges. And once you've learned how to sort of craft that story, you get on camera, and with power, not pity, you divulge your greatest challenge, and then most importantly, how you got through or are getting through it.
Beautiful.
And then when you finish your explanation, you then throw in a humble flex.
I love that.
And the point of a humble flex is that we are multidimensional, and that it reminds us that our challenges do not dictate our constitution, and that we can hold two truths at once.
Love it.
So I can get on camera and I can give my greatest challenge. And then after my explanation of how I got through that, so now it makes it a leadership exercise because you're sharing your success. And then when you throw in the humble flex, it reminds us in the midst of our greatest challenges, we can still be who we are. We're just that same person going through something that's trickier, than at other times.
So the core of who we are stays central. And by sharing that, you're doing it within a community. So you have sort of that witness aspect. And then either you're still getting through it or you've overcome it. And there's some celebration or support within that community environment. And you're coached through that with a mentor, it sounds like.
Yes. And the power not pity component is everything. It is just the most brilliant moment to witness the students and the mentors when they announce a challenge with power, not pity.
I love that so much. And you physically see that.
Oh, you see it. And then suddenly you have students in the room wanting to say, oh, yes, I've endured that. That's happening to me. That's happening to a sibling, whatever it is, because suddenly that challenge is now viewed as something that there will be a solution to be had, as opposed to the woe is me, this happened to me, and now I'm falling apart. It's about the rise up.
I love it so much. It's just beautiful because you really take someone on that journey, even if that experience happened years or months ago, they may be still carrying it and operating within that cocoon of pity, for lack of a better word, and you're helping them break out and see the potential that they could demonstrate given the opportunity. I just love it. It's brilliant.
Well, and it's been really sort of kind of fascinating, and I had shared with you earlier, when we started this, and it came also from some of the experiences that I've had. And what I've also seen is it becomes this incredible icebreaker. So when the students meet me and what they've seen is, oh, the happy blonde handbag designer, and they've seen images of me with celebrities online, and that's the picture that they have. And when they hear my story or stories, it reminds them that you cannot judge a book by its cover.
I love that.
You don't know about me is the most true statement there is. And so what it also does, and I'll share my story in a moment, is it helps these kids to realize at the dinner table that we've all had greatness, we've all had sadness and sorrow, but that we all have the components to drive through those challenges.
It's an incredible tool that you're offering because then you're accessible. Then they see you as real and that what you've achieved is part of who you are, but it isn't the whole core and soul of who you are is much more complex as each person is. And so my guess is they're able to be more vulnerable when they see your vulnerability as well.
Much more, much more. And it's interesting. It came from, in my life, I've had a great life. I had supportive parents. I had enough things that I wasn't short of a meal on my table. We had family support, school support. And when I was younger, my mother, when I was in 7th grade, became very, very ill and was in the hospital the next 2 years in a low-grade coma, and then in and out of the hospital the 2 years after that. But my folks did everything they could to make sure my life still had as much normal as possible, because this, as opposed to it being something that was cast upon us, was part of life. So when life is happening, one's responsibility is to live.
Mm-hmm.
And then, thank goodness, my mom, she rallied. She survived after 4 years.
Amazing.
She had a will and drive to live that was unimaginable. And then when I was, again, this amazing life, everything, I went, finished high school, went to college. And then when I was 25, I was walking down the street in New Hampshire, and it was late at night. And I was attacked and beaten, and I was raped.
Oh, my God. I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. But even that, right, this is something that happened to me. And I immediately defaulted to, this was not my fault.
Right.
This was someone who lost it, whatever it was, whether it was drugs, and I was in their path.
No.
But one thing that was so interesting is I was driving up the 93 freeway, and I heard this ad for the Rape Crisis Center, which was the place that you would go in the 80s. And there was this kind of daunting sort of gothic music, and it was sort of setting the scene up. And then you hear this woman say, oh, my God, that I was raped. And I can't remember it exactly, but the idea was I'll never be whole again. I'll never be able to be with a man again. And then rape crisis center. And thank God there was a place like that. But for me, that felt very defeatist.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
I thought, and everyone needs something different. But a point that I wanted to volunteer in this capacity because I kept thinking, I don't feel like a victim. I feel like I experience this, horror, and physically I will get through this. And I know I will emotionally. So I knew if I felt like that, someone else must feel like that. So I ended up volunteering at a string of self-defense schools. And I'm sitting one day, and it was the very first talk I did. And there are about maybe 75, 80 women. It was all women. And there were a lot of people there that had been raped or sexually assaulted or afraid that their kids would be and wanting to sort of become learned in this arena. And so we're sitting on the ground on these floor mats. And I said, hey, I'm just curious, who here has been sexually assaulted? And almost no hands go up. I mean, literally maybe 2 half little hands in the corner.
Wow.
So I start telling this story about what happened to me. And then I get to the point where it's the craziest thing, and I think a lot of it is how well our minds can protect us. But without going through all the details, I hear a siren. So I don't know why I assumed that was for me, probably because it was dark and quiet. So I'm lying there and I'm battered and it's not pretty. And the funny part is that I'm a fashion designer. And the first place I go to is, oh my gosh, I have this brand new Pepe jean jacket that I had gotten out in California, and they're going to take my jacket. I determine myself that there's enough evidence. This is all so horrible. And it doesn't seem, it's dark, but the jacket seems like, it's not shredded like some of my other clothing.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to manage to hold on to this jacket. So I bundle it up. Somehow I get it like pushed under some shrub because I'm going to go back in the morning and get this thing. And I move it over. And then everyone starts laughing because here's the fashion designer in the middle of this horror.
Right.
Is going to save her new jean jacket.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, everyone starts laughing. So I don't know what it was, in the middle of the laughter, I said, remind me again if you have been through sexual assault. And probably 30 hands go up.
Good for you. Right. Because they felt safe to do it. Mm-hmm.
And I realized this wasn't, oh, Nancy Gale is so great, she relaxed us. It's the moment you smile, you cannot be sad. It just doesn't work. And
Right.
I mean, from like the gut level smile.
Right.
And so that just stuck with me. And that's where that whole reality or realization of power, not pity.
Right.
So if you can train yourself how to tell the story, and it's not about being in denial of how horrible it was.
Right.
But what I also discovered is, wow, when you tell your story with power, other people will share theirs because you're not bringing them into victimhood.
And you're not re-traumatizing necessarily other people with that, which I think is incredible. And I also want to suggest, because I love that story so much, not that it happened to you, but the way that you figure out a way to manage it. I think in times of crisis, when we can have that shift, as you're talking about, which is so important, we look for things where we have some semblance of control. You had control. It was an area of interest. It was really important to you. And that was the thing you were going to save, that jacket, because you worked hard for it. It was really important to you. It was a purchase you wanted to hold on to. It had meaning for you. I love that on so many levels. And the fact that you could bring levity, for lack of a better word, right, to a really horrible situation also demonstrates not only at that time, but post that time, that you were in control of that room or that space somehow. Not fully. It was damaging. It was horrible. I can't even imagine. And there are so many women who have been in that situation or have been attempted sexually assaulted, and it's horrific. And so the fact that you say that you can retrain your brain and your mind, and I believe that 100%. And you're evidence of that. And so are all the people you interface with in terms of teaching them the methodology of tell your story. Your story is yours. and you're telling it in a way that empowers you versus weakens you.
And I think that's the most important piece, right? Because this tell your story and movement, and that's why we put all these conditions around it. That's become, and I've had this conversation with so many, we're feeling like, gosh, it's about ranting and complaining as opposed to solution-driven thinking. And I know for me, cut to another, 15, 20 years later, 10 years, a little over 10 years ago, my mother was murdered in a home invasion.
Horrifically sorry.
And I mean, words you can, and my mom was like, I loved my mom. She was just magical. And you realize you can let these situations take you or propel you. And I knew how I was raised and what my mom would want, and watching her recover from being so ill, and watching even throughout my company. Now it's not easy to start a handbag brand and decide you want to be, world renowned. And I had a business partner at first. We did something a little different in the industry, and then we had a different vision. So then we moved on. Then I had this big dream. Then this happens with my mom. And again, all the while, I feel like I'm living a great life. But there are challenges, and the financial challenges that come along with the brand, and how long all of this really takes. And then that happened to my mom. And I had to continue to make that choice to be always moving forward. And it's funny because people would say to me, wow, how do you put on the happy face? And I remember finally one day I said, I don't put on a happy face. I'm happy Nancy.
Right.
People call me Pollyanna Disneyland. I'm right now happy Nancy, going through a serious challenge and through a long series of events because I was committed to continue to move forward. We were able to actually find the man who was responsible and put him away.
Good. Great.
And then that in itself taught me so much about forgiveness and forward movement and kind of what we owe this world and ourselves. And so everything in my line of fire has shown that this way of thinking, no matter if someone's going through like therapy or whatever they're doing, and especially with therapy, right? The real work is when you're living.
Right.
So to be able to always make that decision to drive forward with positivity, and you can't get cocky about that decision either. In fact, it's so funny because my husband and I have this funny joke, and I didn't even realize it when we moved in together. Apparently, every single morning I get out of the shower and I say, wow, that was the best shower I've ever had.
I love it. I so love it. So you're really also talking about gratitude. And I want to maybe suggest that it isn't an either or. There's a parallel process where you can grieve and you can fight for justice in the case of your mom. And I can't even imagine how devastating that was. And yet her spirit lives on through you. There is no question. I can see it. And that it's a parallel process that you can have gratitude and still have sadness. Doesn't exclude. You just choose not to live in that space, but take action. And in this case, for justice and for her namesake and for her legacy. And that lives on through you, and that no one else will get hurt by this individual, which is a gift to the rest of the world, frankly, to do that.
That is just so perfectly said, right? Because that's the whole idea, right, of these two truths.
Yes, two truths. I love that.
And it's interesting, too, going into the space of like talking about forgiveness also. When we put this man away and he lost it. I mean, he had a life that was, he had family and, he had kids, he had a job, he had an old drug problem, which things spiraled out of control. And I remember thinking, we've all seen those TV shows where we'll see a family say, we forgave someone who killed a family member. And I think we all wonder, like, what does that mean exactly? And we're supposed to believe in redemption, but there's so much hostility right now. And we teach kids to say, I'm sorry. But if you say you're sorry, there's always someone there to say, you don't mean that. You're just saying it because you want to.
Right.
So it's hard to win. Like, why even teach your kids to say, I'm sorry and be accountable if no one's ever going to believe that? And what I realized with this was, it's not like I forgive you and hey, dude, when you're out of prison, let's go have some cocktails.
Right.
I had to forgive the frailty of life.
Beautiful.
And the situation and the vulnerability, and to recognize you just really, going back to the origin of this conversation, you don't know where someone is and what they're going through.
True.
And it doesn't make anything, especially something as heinous as this, okay.
Right.
But I knew if I didn't forgive the situation, then I couldn't move on and thrive.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there are levels of that, right? Because you still took action. You still made society safer. You still honored your mom. But if you stay stuck in that, regardless of what the outcome might have been, you're right, you can't move forward. And so you have figured out a way to do that.
Yeah, and you forget to like look for the gold and in
Mm,
every situation. So for this, obviously, there's not a moment in a day that I wouldn't prefer this to have never happened.
right.
But what I've done with this is looked at it and realized, wow, when I share that story with my students who had predetermined that we would never have anything in common, suddenly there's a connection. So I
Right.
feel like that's all the fairy dust that my mom left with me. And so I've turned her magic and focused just on her life, not her death, but in a way that has opened up pathways with our students for them. Because as soon as they hear my story, the mentors come into the room and they realize, oh, maybe we do have things in common with these people that we deem kind of out of our arena.
I love that. It's a way to bring humanity closer together and that we're more similar than we are different in so many ways. And again, as I said before, it allows for a level of vulnerability. So that first semester is all about you don't know me and doing that whole process of uncovering what is that challenge? How can we talk about it? And how do we move forward? And then I love what did you call it? The little humble.
The humble flex.
I love that. What happens then? Is that for the first semester of the
The first semester every week. Then the second semester, we move into marketing.
great?
But because we know the kids so well now, we know who will excel where,
Great.
and we can guide them much more easily.
It's tailored in some way.
Yes, yes. So we start off the beginning of the semester, the students collectively come up with someone famous, one or two folks that they want to meet. And that could be a scientist, a doctor, an athlete, an actor, whatever it is. Then they have to study that person, write a script, we film it, and then we start sending it around. So everything they want, they have to do a marketing plan to get. So the very first one we ever did resulted in Richard Branson being our first special guest.
I love it. That is so cool.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Yeah, amazing. And amazing that he responded, which I love that too.
And that kind of put us on the map. And then actually about 4 or 5 years ago, craziest thing, we discovered our students were mad about, it's a Disney show called Wizards of Waverly Place. Students were obsessed with the brother and sister, which apparently, and I hadn't watched the show, but it was Selena Gomez and David Henry. So they wanted to meet David Henry. So we put together this whole same thing. They had to study him, his family. Then it was really, really fun because I came into class finally like months after we had started the campaign. And I said, hey, I heard from David Henry. And next Wednesday morning, we're going to have a full classroom FaceTime call with him.
Oh, I love it.
So the kids come in the next Wednesday armed with questions, and we're in a big horseshoe, and everyone looks like it doesn't feel like it's 8 a.m. in a high school. And
I love it. It's great.
then we get on to FaceTime, and he couldn't come to in person because he was in Paris. So he said, we'll do this over FaceTime. So
Love it.
at the very beginning of the call goes dead, and he texts me, and I said, oh, he's going through a tunnel. He'll be here in a moment. And so I said, let's get up and get our energy going and just do jumping jacks and move, get some movement going. And unbeknownst to the classroom, my husband and David are around the corner. So they slither into the room and just start doing jumping jacks. And the kids go crazy. And then it was so amazing because at the end of the class, I had students saying to me, wow, what we've seen today is if you want something and you do the work, and it's hard work, and that's okay, you can achieve things.
Beautiful.
And it's so cool because, there's this idea now, right, that we can't talk about hard work because of mental health. And I'm like, what it opened up for us is an amazing pathway to the conversation around the joy of hard work.
I love that. It's so important.
And learning how to find passion in anything that we do. So that was a really stellar moment for us.
I love that. And do the students, when they're interested in whoever they choose, whether it's an actor or a scientist or another entrepreneur, do they get in groups to do this? Do they do this solo? So how does that form? And then you do that for the whole rest of the semester.
So we have about 5 or 6 students and 2 or 3 mentors in each group. And sometimes the person they chose as they go to do the research, they decide is not the person that they want, which I love when that happens.
I do too.
Yeah, because they're having to really dig in. Now, after that, we move into the last part of the semester where we take all this new knowledge and the skill set and we market our brand. We have t-shirts, dog chains, necklaces, and they all have "You Don't Know About Me" on one side and "Power Not Pity" on the other.
Love it.
And that money all goes back into Ambition for the Programming and Scholarship Fund.
That's great. So they do part of that marketing and sort of sales in that context?
Everything. So if we have a student, though, that says, "I want to be behind the scenes," then they can work in our operations.
Right.
So it's sort of our Girl Scout cookie model. The great thing about the brand being ours under Ambition is that we have complete bandwidth. We have total latitude to take a student into any part of it.
That's great.
Originally, we had started the brand separately, but recently we moved it into under Ambition. And so it's all just one. And any student can say, "I'm interested in learning how we make the logos or the branding," or whatever it is, they can come in.
It's so great. And do some of your students come up with new current ideas of selling a branded item that you hadn't thought of before?
Oh, yes. And that's probably the conversation we have for the first month is after we do the couples reach outs, because that gets them really excited.
Mm-hmm.
And that also helps inspire them. So then we spent about a month talking about some ideas. Yeah. And sometimes the ideas come up collectively.
That's so cool because you really listen to your students too. And it's sort of a back and forth kind of thing, which is not just one way. You give them the framework and the context and the curriculum, and what they do with it can yield so many interesting new things that you hadn't thought of. I just think that's such a cool experience. And so that's the year-long program. So if you have a junior, do they then go into a senior year that has a different curriculum, or how does that generally flow?
So we've actually now moved our programming. We're partnering with the Boys and Girls Club.
I love that.
So a student now can very easily say, I just like the program's set up the way that it is. So if they do it twice, or sometimes now we might have 10th graders. For our purposes, 10th, 11th, and 12th is the ideal age. So they would just repeat it. And that we love because now they have new ideas. The second year, they get it more. And then we do have an offering, though, where we have student-run, You Don't Know About Me clubs.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
And so any student at any school, disadvantaged up to the wealthiest of schools, which we love, because then we can bring all those students together. And so those are student-run and mentor-backed programming for You Don't Know About Me.
Oh, I love it. So they have gone through the program and then they can create a club.
No, they actually had not even necessarily gone through the program.
Oh,
Because
that's
it's
great.
at schools, because the full ambition program is definitely for disadvantaged teens.
Right.
So we can bring this to any school because all the schools have clubs, and then a lot of the kids need to do extra volunteers for their grades. And so we find like the captain or the leader of that club. We train them, and then a group of us will Zoom with them to make sure it's going in at the end of that semester. Same thing. They all do their official You Don't Know About Me's, which we have a setup, which will have a little backdrop and the chair and the mic stand. And
I just love that whole experience. And I also love that you allow students to repeat a year because then they bring other students. Sort of when you have seasoned versus less seasoned students, it just builds much more collateral for the whole group and much more community. So I just think the model is so amazing and so interesting. I'm sure you have a million, but I would love to hear a couple aha stories of like where you weren't sure about maybe a student, or it was sort of a surprise, or anything that comes to mind. I'd love to hear those.
I'll start off, and I will give you a name because she's our champion, and we're actually very dear friends now. It's so funny. They go from these young, shy teenagers, and now some of them are 25, 26, 27 years old.
I love it.
So we have a student, Yessie, who used to sit in the back of the classroom, shy as can be and sort of curled up down next to her best friend, Leslie, and she really wouldn't speak. And one day she got on camera and she got the nerve up to do her You Don't Know About Me.
Mm.
And she tells the story, and it's about coming home to find ice at her house and her dad being deported.
Wow.
And this triggered, obviously, a lot of incidents that happened when she was in third grade.
Yeah.
So as an adult, we started discovering the impact of that. And so she does her You Don't Know About Me, and it's mind-blowing. And you see her rise up, like this shy little girl turned into this amazing young lady right in front of our eyes. And so shortly thereafter, she would send me texts and she'd say, you know, I'm driving through Beverly Hills right now and I'm watching these businesswomen sitting outside having lunch. And you know what? I can be one of those. It doesn't matter my background, my life, anything. I can have that.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, she sends me a text and she said, oh my gosh, you need to call me right now. So I called her. And their school was down, I think it was at Deloitte and Touche downtown, doing a school, I guess.
Like career day or something
career
like
day,
that.
yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so she said, you'll never believe. One of our mentors, he's since passed away, but we called him Uncle Ken. And she said, I'm at Deloitte and Touche and I just saw Uncle Ken. She said, you will never believe what I did. I said, what did you do? She said, I walked right over to him and I introduced myself to the whole group that he was standing with. And there were 5 other men and women there. And this is mind-blowing. Like, again, the little girl who sat in the back of the classroom, she said, it was amazing. And he introduced me to all of them. And it was just unbelievable to hear the light in her.
Yeah.
And sure enough, as I'm talking to her, Ken is texting me. He said, I'm going to call you on the way home. You will never believe what just happened. And he was so excited to call and share that with me. And now she's thriving. She lives in Vegas now. She's working at a big hotel.
I love it.
Yeah, you get to be a fly on the wall of their life. And it's funny because as I mentor her, she continues to mentor me because
Of course.
these kids keep you grounded.
And they teach us, right? They teach us
they
when we're able
teach
all the
us. And
time. But what a great example of transformation of someone who really thought they were and were in some ways in a one down position and thought, what can I take from this that, as you use the word propel, which I love, propels me forward. And part of it is networking, connections, access. You talked about that earlier. And you're giving them the tools to be able to do that.
yes,
And it's a great example. It's really beautiful. I love that.
I'll give you a second story. She was the student that we'd say, well, we wouldn't be surprised if she just wanted to burn the school down. She'd come into the classroom angry, and she had that personality that could really dictate the course of the class that day. And I pride myself on being able to get through to these kids to find at least some common ground. Could not do it. So I do mine first, and this is the first time she hears the story about my mom.
Yeah.
Then she tells her story, which was the story of her dad being shot and killed by the police. She had heard my story. So then she tells her story and said, when I heard Nancy's story, I realized my life could go on.
Oh, wow.
Because now we have these shared experiences. And so she had just heard it. So in this very short window of time, she goes from being so angry to not wanting to be in the classroom with us at all, to hearing my story, to then she wasn't in the class the next semester, but she'd show up every week.
Oh, God, that's really funny. So it was like this, I want to be there, but I don't want to tell you I want to be there. I don't want to commit that I'm going to be there. It's interesting.
Yes. And then all of a sudden she shares her story and the whole classroom saw her differently.
I bet.
And now she wasn't the hard, angry, and obviously for all these kids, this is just our moment in the classroom. They have so many other teachers, right? And a parent or aunts or uncles or grandparents, but we get to be a part of this part of their world. And so she came out a leader like you can't imagine.
I love that.
We're still very, very close with her. She's now a mother. She's in her late 20s.
That's great.
And it's mind-blowing that that connection was built. And what's amazing about the You Don't Know About Me's is this leadership exercise, but at the same time, it bonds members of our community.
Absolutely.
Mentor to student, student to student, student to mentor, mentor to mentor. Like, it's just absolutely the most beautiful thing. And suddenly you have a room full of people talking about these shared experiences, which some are mind-blowing, but what you don't hear in that room is anyone who wants to be pitied.
I love that. It really is transformative. And of course, there are other variables in their lives that are positive, as you mentioned, like there could be a caregiver, there could be a relative, there certainly are other teachers. That doesn't take any of that away. But the experience that you're providing is both individual transformation and then the community. Like this young woman came in and she, as you pointed out, set a negative tone in the class initially. And it was sort of like put a toe in the water, pull it out, not sure I want to be there. Here's your story. And then is able to share hers. And with the community embracing her in a particular way, her tone changed and impacted the entire community within that classroom. It's a remarkable gift that you are giving these students. And again, of course, there are other variables. And it doesn't underestimate the power of that kind of storytelling in a way that transforms the narrative intrinsically to, as we've said before, forward moving. I mean, it's really remarkable that you've created this and figured it out. And so much of it has to do with your own experiences, good and really tragic, both of them.
Well, it's interesting. I just had a text exchange with a friend last night, and we were talking about grief. And I said, for whatever it is in my personality and how I was raised and whatever these components are, I always tend towards simple.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent him that. I have a little video about that says, for the moment that you smile, you cannot be sad. I said, I lean into that. I lean into conversation because I feel like we're in a very complicated world right now that we have complicated. And one of my favorite sayings, right, is sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Yeah, I love it.
Sometimes the glass crashes on the floor, and yes, it may trigger all these other memories. But the truth is, sometimes we're just angry that the glass hit the floor.
Right. That's a really good point. We don't have to make more of it than it is.
Yes.
At times. I hear you.
But when I tell even that story, there's always someone to say, well, but you don't know what that triggered. And I always think we need to sort of back it up because you don't know what it triggered either.
Right.
Maybe it triggered nothing.
Right.
And we have to remember to ask ourselves the question, when things happen, in the grand scheme of things, is this going to matter?
Right.
And if so, how do we move forward constructively?
Right.
And so I feel like, at least for me, what works is my mission is always to try to minimize. In fact, we have a conversation constantly with the ambition students. I have it with friends. I have it with my husband. I always say, if you can show how the angst and anger is going to help us solve the problem, I will out-angst and out-anger you any day.
I love it so much because it's true. It's really, we get to make choices. And again, as we said before, it's a parallel process. You don't have to stay in one side or the other till you move through it. And then you use those experiences to really find your way in a positive direction, because that's really what you're teaching. Like, use it in a way that empowers you and creates determination. I just think it's remarkable.
That's well said.
You're a remarkable person who has done so much for so many, and you wanted to give back based on the early experience that you had that was so positive, despite those horrific things that happened to you. And it teaches a lot for other people. What do you hold on to? What do you let go? And you may never fully let go of the trauma, but you don't live in that space. You sort of acknowledge it. It exists. Maybe there's a trigger. And it's like good grief. Things will get triggered, but the piece that gets triggered becomes shorter and shorter and shorter as you start to do much more forward thinking and movement and have successes. And that's what you're teaching these kids, which is fabulous.
You know what's really amazing, too, when you just think of human beings? Like, so now my clients are starting to volunteer and or donate to Ambition.
I love it.
So we just have this one amazing marriage. And then again, the kids get to see that these people I put into this space and have decided they're not my people, they're actually my people.
Yeah, I love that. That's why the intertwining of commerce and cause for you is so deeply integrated. And I agree. I have to tell one quick story. So I have taught in the social work school at USC and in the policy school. And I remember early on students in my teaching, because it was more organizational behavior type classes, I would have students say, oh, I love to buy these pants because they give 10% to whatever cause. And then I said, dig a little deeper and see if they really give 10%. You're laughing, but it's so true. Dig a little deeper and see if that's really, is it on their net proceeds? Is it their gross proceeds? Like really dig, because it isn't always what it appears to be. And I'm not saying that good causes and cause and commerce shouldn't go hand in hand. I'm a full believer in that. But really determine what really is being donated. And so I love that you've really intertwined it in a very both progressive way, but also in a way that has teeth. It has, real guts to it, which I just think is fabulous. So at the end of our podcast, you may or may not know, we always have a round of quick and gutsy questions, and we always get little gems and little pearls. So if you are ready for your quick and gutsies, I'm ready to ask them.
All right.
So what is at the top of your wish list for ambition? However, the answer can't be money or funding, because for most nonprofits, that's what they're looking for. So what's at the top of your wish list for ambition?
Growth and awareness.
Love it. Love it. I think that can do so much and so many. And I actually would love to add one more. Adoption of it in every school, as you've pointed out, every club, everywhere across the country. I want to take the course. Can I do it? I'm too old. Can we do it?
No.
I'd like to see it even at the graduate school level.
But you can come and mentor, and that's how all the mentors really take the course.
Actually, I would love to. We should talk. We'll talk offline. I'd love to. That would be a gift, actually. If you were to think of a song that describes ambition, or a lyric, if you can't think of a song, what would it be?
Dancing in the Moonlight.
I love that. That's truly what it is.
It is.
Truly what it is. I love it.
There's no coincidence that was one of our wedding songs.
Oh my gosh, my heart is like...
It's a metaphor for life.
It is. It's a metaphor for life. Oh, I love that so much. Oh, I love that. I'm going to think every time I get out of the shower, I'm going to now say, that is the best shower I've ever had. So you've already changed me. And I'm really going to do it, because gratitude is really important. And, look, yes, I can understand why people say Pollyannish or whatever. You're not. And I'm going to tell you why. Because this is my feeling, my observation, not even knowing you that well, is because Pollyannish is sort of, there's a level of superficiality. You are anything but. You have just chosen to merge those two sides of yourself, of the difficulty, challenges, and all the positive moving forward. And so in doing that, gratitude comes out in everything you do. And it's clear to me. And I think that's really using your experiences in the most positive way you can. So thank you for that. I'm going to get out of my shower every day and say, God, that was the best shower. I loved it. Okay, so what makes ambition gutsy? Because you're certainly gutsy and you're part of the small and gutsy family.
From its inception to the way that we practice, we have no limits. We follow no rules. We've really put aside the foundation, right, is that everybody's input against what we're doing is not relevant.
Yeah.
It's relevant to take into consideration and to walk yourself through, but you are allowed to come out the other side and say, no, I don't agree with that. That's not for me. That's not my path. So I feel like the program itself is gutsy, and the way that it's run and the philosophy behind it is very gutsy, because it's all about unlimited thinking.
Yeah, I do too. I love that it's out of the box. I love that you entertain. You really push your students to do the work with support and mentoring, but they take ownership and accountability. And that is so beautiful, because it's really teaching a methodology that they can transfer to anything in their life. And I think that too makes it gutsy. It's beautiful. Okay, what is something that outsiders, or maybe even a few insiders, don't know about ambition?
Well, many don't know about how we got the Ambition URL, which was just an unbelievable journey. We had a different working name, and then when I realized Ambition's the name we want, of course, I go to get the URL, ambition.org, which was not surprisingly not available, but it's not being used. So we find out who owns it, this gentleman named Bob Deemer, and I sent him a note and I said, can we buy this URL? We really want it. And he writes back and said, well, what's your budget? I mean, what are you planning on paying? And I said, well, I'm a nonprofit, which I know when I sent that note back, he thought,
forgot it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, we ended up getting on the phone and I said, here's the deal. Whatever you're going to charge, my students are going to be responsible for finding a way to raise them.
Mm-hmm.
We have no budget, high or low. And he lived in the East Coast. I said, why don't you come out and meet the Ambition kids? Negotiate with them yourself.
Good for you.
So he comes out. He says, yes. I don't even know this man. Like, it was just unbelievable. We go to dinner and we talk more. He said, no, really, I just want to know the budget. I said, honestly, you sell it, you negotiate with them the same way you would negotiate with me or any business owner. So he comes into class and he has a great story and he talks to the kids a lot about, we want to teach you how to fish, the philosophy behind that. And then they have a long conversation and we go into a year-long negotiation.
Wow.
And we have a negotiator come to class. The mentors are working with the kids. And so the number thrown out was $25,000. So I said, if that's what it is, that's what it is. At the end of the year, the students with our negotiator get on Zoom with him. He's now back in the East Coast. And said, all right, here's the deal. We're willing to pay $5,000, but we don't have the $5,000. We have to raise it. And we'll also start a fund that keeps you in perpetuity of the program, the Bob Deemer mentioned in our scholarship fund. They said, that's what we can do. And we'll figure out a payment plan. And all of a sudden we hear a ding and he writes back, you got it.
It's so great.
It still brings chills to me. So then this continues on because now we share the story with every new group of kids. So Bob calls me one day. He wanted to do all the major marathons. And I think there are 7 or 9. But the hardest one to get into is the Boston Marathon.
Of course, yeah.
So my first boss out of college was the race director for the Boston Marathon.
Oh, funny.
And he worked for Saucony Running Shoes at the time as well. And I reached out to him after years and years. I mean, we were slightly in touch on Facebook. He said, look, we can't, give slots away. He said, but there might be a particular charity that has a couple more openings. Let me find out. So he calls me and he said he can be on this charity team. He has to raise $3,000 for the cause of whatever that charity was. And I said, all right. So we get on a call with Bob Deemer and announce to him that not only did we get him a charity bid, but we're going to raise the money for him.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's great. I love it. Love it.
So it kept the story very sticky and connected. Yeah, that's just absolutely crazy. And then it took us a long time. We made that last payment because we don't do grants and big fundraising. Everything's kind of tight. And now that we're growing, we're sort of looking at what that whole world looks like and selling the merchandise. But at the time, it took us a long time. And then one day, suddenly we had ambition.org. He ran the marathon and then he got onto a Zoom with us after the marathon and walked us through the whole event. So the continuation of that is just so amazing.
It's amazing, and it speaks to the concept of ambition, both ambition for the students to say, we really love this name, we're going to negotiate and we're going to fight hard, and to go from 25,000 down to 5. And he said done, because I think he was deeply moved by their approach. And it was a year-long process of back and forth thinking, research, the whole thing. And then he has this legacy. And then the marathon raising $3,000 for another charity is just a beautiful kind of closing of that piece that, again, lives on. For every time you have a new group, you can tell that story.
Yes. And what you even just said, one of the great things about these kids raising money for another charity, they're so used to being the charity.
Oh, beautifully said. Yep.
Right? That when you put them in a position to realize, like, we don't see you that way. You're leaders. That's what you are.
Right. I love it. And to be part of a negotiation like that and to really think creatively about what's important to this guy, what's important to us, where can we, the whole thing is just an incredible learning experience. that was live. And what I love about your model is it's in real time. You're doing things in real time and real experiences. And it's rare that that happens in that way, where that experience then will live on, both for you all as an organization, but for each student that has participated in that. So last small and gutsy question, if you could get, this is a little bit unfair because you're a little bit in that world, and your students certainly move into those spaces, which I think is great. If you could get one celebrity or influencer to endorse or talk about ambition, who might that be?
I'm driven to want to say, I don't know who it would be, but it would likely be an athlete. Because one of the things I think that's happening now is, again, all these conversations about, as soon as you talk about hard work, you start hearing this sort of rumblings of, well, that's not good for your mental health and you don't have balance in life. Yet, at the same time, the people saying that love having athletes come talk to these kids. These athletes, and no matter who they are and where their life may or may not go and where they've been, to play on a sports team, especially right in the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, you have to work your ass off.
Absolutely. No question. And you have to be a team. You have to be connected to a team and a community.
Yes.
To be effective.
Yes.
You know what? Put that to your students and see who could be an ambassador for you all, and maybe try to have them negotiate a little bit of that. I love it. So I lived in Boston for 30 years before I moved to LA. And I remember, Tom Brady is such an icon at this point, but I remember when he first started, that's how old I am, early on in his career. And I remember the Patriots were in their first Super Bowl after having a huge dry spell for years and years and years and years. And I don't remember who they were playing, but I do remember something very pivotal about that particular Super Bowl. The Patriots chose to come out on the field as a team instead of, how they used to come out individually and you'd call the players' names?
Yeah.
And I was so moved by that. I used it in my organizational coaching work and training as an example of and it was real. It wasn't just let's do this in name and whatever, and they won. It was really their philosophy and approach that everybody was valuable on the team. Yes, the quarterback leads certain things, and Tom Brady was amazing. But this was really as he was just emerging. But it was such a statement in how we can be a team. And I think good athletes understand the value of their community as well as the hard work they individually have to do for themselves. So I love that answer so much. I would love to see you put that to your students and see what they do with it and say, who could endorse? Who could we get? I love it. Look what we came up with. Or is there anything you haven't said that you want to say? I want to give you the floor to say any last words you want to.
Don't think so. I feel like this just felt really beautiful.
Yeah, I thought so too. So how do people reach you? How do people reach Ambition? How do they learn about your program?
Ambition.org is the website. There are buttons there for any way to volunteer, to donate, the typical info@ambition.org if you want to reach out to us. But you'll learn everything there at ambition.org and how to contact us.
I love it. And I've been to your website clearly, and I love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I love your colors. I love the whole approach to the website. I love all of the mantras, and your approach to your program is just amazing. So I have to take a moment, Nancy, and thank you. You are a delight is just an understatement of what you are. You bring joy, and it isn't Pollyannish joy. So when people say that to you, say, no, you're really the definition of joy. With all the hardships of life converts to what do we do with it? And that's the joy.
Oh,
So thank you.
thank you so much. This was really lovely.
I loved it. Please go to smallandgutsy.org to check out all of our episodes. And if you're so inclined, please purchase some Small and Gutsy merchandise, consider sponsoring an episode, or making a donation. Both are tax deductible and help keep us going and spotlighting these great organizations. The opinions and viewpoints expressed by our guests are independent and don't reflect the position or views of Small and Gutsy. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, so before you sign on to support or work for them, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, the Intrinsic Group, the donors, the sponsors, and my incredible board of directors Brianna Carmichael, John Gatto, Lucy Mello, Ari McCoy, Melissa Greitz, and Serena Rajabian, who believed in me in this project enough so to sign on to support this effort, and all the folks, friends, and family who have guided and inspired me. And thank you for listening. Together, we are spreading social impact, and you can help us. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to email me the name of any organization you feel would benefit from being interviewed, from small and gutsy to big with impact. I'm Dr. Laura Shirk-Witkoff, and thanks for listening.